Today's session is printing high-tech textiles. And the seats are pretty full for this one, and I think because this is a decorating challenge for people. Ultimately, almost everybody can decorate a cotton t-shirt with their process. Outside of sublimation, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but almost everybody can decorate cotton and natural fabrics. But when you get into technical fabrics, specifically synthetic fabrics, different polyesters, different types of nylons, that's where the challenges start. And that's where other decorating disciplines stop and heat printing really comes into play. Now, how many screen printers do I have today in the audience? A good bit. So a lot of screen printers do have success decorating some of these technical textiles as well, but they still pose challenges to decorators in general. It's important to understand that heat printing and screen printing go hand in hand. It's not an either-or scenario. There's always going to be a breaking point on every job where it makes sense to either heat print it or screen print it. And that's based on number of colors and quantity. So we won't go through that whole scenario, but I'll show you an example later where we'll look at a few color design and talk about what it will cost to screen print versus heat printing it. So these things are tough to decorate. Let's take a look at some of the fabrics that make up technical textiles. One of those is very stretch related fabric. That's one of the main challenges in the technical fabric marketplace. A lot of times in performance garments specifically, you'll have stretch problems that are tough. So something may stick to it, but it may not perform and stretch the way you would like it to or the way the customer would like it to on the garment. So we're going to decorate some stretch fabrics today. Another style of, or another makeup where technical fabrics are used is in bags. This is a nylon bag. This same material is also used a lot for outerwear or for jackets. These are some of the most challenging things to get something to stick and stay on, especially a jacket, because a lot of times we have some sort of coating. It could be a waterproof coating or something that's a water repellent that makes it really tough to adhere to with different processes. Another issue, just the way it's manufactured with polyester fabrics, whether it's a table cover or a performance shirt or a sports jersey, is that they're dyed when they're manufactured. So the way polyesters are manufactured, it actually has a dye. And specifically with red garments or maroon garments, when that dye becomes unstable on a manufacturing lot of fabrics, you have something called dye migration. When you heat it up, the dyes want to bleed through the lettering. So when you put a white number onto a red jersey, the number starts to turn pink. And no offensive or defensive lineman wants to be out there with pink numbers on his back. I can assure you of that. Not many, at least. So it's not a preferred result. So we have to talk about dye migration. We have to talk about, what do we do to address that? And so as we go through some of these different fabrics, some of these different problems, we're going to look at 4 decorating disciplines today. We're not just going to show you one. So everything is going to end at the heat press when it's finished, so everything will be heat printing, but there's 4 different output devices that we'll explain today that get you over to the heat press to press garments. And the first of which is heat transfer films. Heat transfer films, you just have a basic vinyl cutter. I'm going to have Courtney just send a job over to the cutter. What you do is you source a roll of heat applied film. I happen to know a good manufacturer of heat applied films. I'll tell you a secret, Stahls. We make this stuff, we sell it direct to you, so you get a good price point and you get the best material out there for performance. So we're just cutting a product here to show you how it works. You design in a vector-based graphic program, so if you have CorelDRAW, Adobe Illustrator, you just create your vector artwork, output it to the vinyl cutter of choice. We happen to sell the Roland GX24, also a less expensive GCC unit that we like and support. But ultimately, any cutter works. If you have a sign shop, you can use your cutter. Just send a heat applied film through. It's going to cut the name and number combination in a mirror image. Everything's mirrored. And then I'm going to weed the excess away and we'll heat apply it down to the garment. So after it's cut, you can gang up all of your designs in the software so that you can really maximize the usage of this material. In this case, I just wanted to show you a single name and number combo. You basically take the weeding tool. When we manufacture this stuff, you have the polyurethane layer of film, and you have an adhesive on the back, and then you have the carrier. Depending on what film you source from us, the carrier may be sticky or it may not be. It's usually your preference on, if you're cutting big, larger images, you usually don't need a sticky carrier, but some people like it for placement on the garment. So just try some different ones in our lineup, or talk to one of our experts here and we'll place you with the right product for your types of designs. But anyways, we're gonna weed away this film. And then we're ready to heat apply this down to the garment after we take the pick tool and pick out any centers of letters. So we'll take the Easyweeder and we'll just pick out these centers really quickly. And now that's ready to heat apply down to whatever garment. So when you look at, I'll just pass this around so you can just feel the material. When you look at heat applied films, first thing we need to understand is if your graphic is single color, this is a perfect way to produce it. You just source the rolls of films in different colors, cut them, weed them, and heat apply them down to the garment. Now there's different types of films for the challenges. So if you have one of these garments with dye migration issues, I'm going to pass around this sample. If you look at the top example, this is a really thin film that does not have the ability to block dye migration. In screen printing, when you're printing a garment that migrates, you would use a low bleed ink. That way it doesn't come through. So our low bleed heat transfer film is called thermofilm. It's actually our #1 seller for athletics, and that's the design below it. So I'll pass this around just so you can compare the top strip that's migrating to the clean white of thermofilm. Now if your garment has stretch, if your garment has stretch to it, we carry a material called CADCUT Premium Plus that has really good stretch and rebound capabilities. So I've prepared this design ahead of time. I'm just going to load this compression fabric and we'll heat press it on. So I'm always going to preheat. With synthetic fabrics, technical fabrics especially, you always want to preheat to remove the moisture and wrinkles. It's going to give you the longevity of the print. It's better durability when you preheat to get that moisture out of there. Position my design down. With Premium Plus, it actually has a flexible temperature range. So depending on the fabric, whether it's heat sensitive, I can take the heat all the way from like 255 up through 330, depending on what's convenient for your shop and your heat press operator. So I'll press that on. And then I just peel the backing away. It pretty much just falls away from the material. And I'll cool this down so I don't burn your hands when I pass it around. I'm used to it. They're all callous now. And once this cools down, give it a tug, stretch it. You don't have to get crazy with it. Nobody wears their shirt out like this, but give it a nice stretch and tug and just circulate it through the audience. So that's CADCUT Premium Plus. You may want to jot that name down if you have a notepad or something like that. If you need stretch performance, if you have a heat sensitive item for a single color graphic, you want to use the CADCUT process, you want to use CADCUT Premium Plus. If you have dye migration issues, how am I supposed to know that? How am I supposed to know if the garment's going to migrate? Well, you're going to have to test, because you may get one shipment today that's fine, and you may get a shipment next week that's from a different manufacturing lot where the dyes are unstable. So what I always recommend doing is take one garment, add it into the cost of your job, and heat press something to it, let it sit for 24 to 48 hours, or run it through the dryer in your office or at home if you have one, and see if the dyes start to bleed through the design. If it does, that's when you need thermofilm. So if you stock Premium Plus and thermofilm, there shouldn't be a single color job that you can't handle. Of course, with the CADCUT process, it doesn't have to be all basic stuff. A lot of technical fabrics are being worn by runners, roadside work crews, even firemen, ambulance, EMTs. Everything's going towards performance fabrics. And so we also have a reflective material, which I've already cut and weeded back at the office, and I'm going to apply this down to a loose fit technical fabric. So the one I'm passing around first, that's a compression fabric this is a loose fit fabric. Once again, very easy. I can actually, with this heat press, I can split the garment, load it on, always preheat. Position the design down, and then just press it on for the recommended time, temperature, and pressure. If you pick up one of our little CAD-CUT Direct catalogs, actually, do you mind just grabbing a stack and we'll circulate them through? There is instructions for every single material in that catalog. This is basically your oven, your material is your pizza. It's going to tell you on the pizza what to set the oven for, same concept. So then I just peel the backing away on this. And I have a high-end garment ready to sell. I'll pass that around as well. So reflective shouldn't be ignored. It's going to open up a ton of different opportunities, and you can accommodate it all with a vinyl cutter. Questions, quick questions on the vinyl cutting process before we move to the next decorating discipline for technical fabrics. This is a loose fit. What kind of fabric was the shirt, was the question. This is a loose fit polyester garment. So you'll see different names and brands that people use. They may call it dry fit. They may just call it, moisture wicking. There's 100 different names, but ultimately polyester is what we're looking at to decorate there. Reflective also blocks dye migration. So you don't have to worry about dyes migrating when you use reflective material, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that is CAD-CUT. Now if we take a graduation from vinyl cutting and CAD-CUT designs, and what if the customer has full color artwork or multiple colors in the art? And that's where we come over to this unit, which is a print cut device. We call our materials for that CAD color. Basically you start with a white base film, load it into the printer cutter, program your artwork in your software, and output it to the unit. And now I can gang multiple jobs up because the media is white. It starts white, and the ink, the CMYK inks loaded on the left-hand side of that printer, they do all the printing of the colors. So it's kind of cool too, even for single color stuff, you don't have to worry about holding inventory of all these different colors and rolls. You can just print whatever color you want. Or if you need to hit like a Pantone match, so you're doing something, you need Home Depot orange, you can print Home Depot orange. You print a chip chart and you match up the color. So it's a pretty cool process because the machine just prints and cuts. This particular machine retails at $15,995. That's about $14,000 more than this machine, so you know. But this gives you a lot of different capabilities. It opens up your capabilities for artwork. So I'm just going to leave that print. You'll see it print the whole job and it'll come back and cut it. After you print and cut it, you weed away the excess material. I'll show you that momentarily, and apply a masking down to it. The heat transfer mask is basically a sticky mask, and it picks up the heat transfer from the backing material, and now I basically have a print that's ready to heat apply down on to whatever technical fabric I like. So if you want to do something like a jacket, that's possible. So I'll load the jacket on and we'll press this. Two materials you need to know from the print cut side. Number one is express print. If you have a solvent printer, you should write down express print to use for your t-shirts, a lot of your different items. That's a basic material, has pretty good flexibility. It'll apply to cotton, polyester, and some nylons. Now you also need to know the name Solutions Opaque. Solutions is your solution for all the stuff that you can't do with express print. So something that's really stretchy or something that's really tough to apply to, that has like a waterproof coating or something like that, then Solution is the product to go to. So I'll load my jacket on here. Once again, the heat press is really helpful because I can tuck all the bulk underneath it and not have to worry about hanging off the side. I'm going to preheat to flatten this out and remove the moisture and wrinkles. And then I'll grab my Solutions design, which I placed down on the wrong side of the mask, so hopefully it comes up for me here. And then you always want to cover this particular type of fabric with a cover sheet, although when I preheat it I forgot to. It just will help prevent like a heat press mark or something like that. It's always good to use a cover sheet with this type of application. I'm going to give it about 5 seconds just to get the mask off. Always start to peel lightly just to make sure it's completely set up and adhering, because fabrics are so different. You just want to make sure that you don't need to wait until it cools to peel the back, but you can usually hot peel all the time. And then I'm going to cover it up just to finish it off and give it an additional 5 seconds with this material. And then we have a completed jacket. Now some shops, obviously we press the wrinkles out of part of the jacket. Some shops would press this bottom so you couldn't see that heat press box when you send it out the door. That's up to you. But the point is that you can accommodate these tough to do items with print cut materials as well. An 8-color logo, 8-color design. Who would screen print this? It'd be pretty tough. I mean, there's a lot of setup, especially if we're talking about Luigi's Pizzeria, where they probably have, 15 employees. You wouldn't want to be screen printing 15 8-color jackets. So I'll pass that around so you can see what it looks and feels like on there. If you've been watching the printer, now it's coming back to do the cutting. It print everything, it retracts it back, and then it brings the device out and it starts to cut. Of course, print cut materials can also accommodate some of the other technical fabrics, like the same stretch fabric we just did. I'm going to go ahead and apply a solutions print down to this stretch fabric so you can see how that works. And you can get really creative with this unit. So if you do a lot of like 2-color or 3-color numbers, rather than having to cut individual layers of heat transfer film and build them up layer on layer to do an application, you could simply print and cut all the colors. And for this particular design, we even did a logo drop in there as well. And I'll give it an additional 5 seconds. So heat applied film, the single color stuff, it's about 1 to 2 cents per square inch to produce as far as cost of material. Print cut stuff's usually about 2 to 3 cents per square inch to produce when you calculate in mask and everything. Must be something on the top of my heat press. It keeps grabbing my cover sheet. Yeah, some cheese from the pizza. Good question. The question was, how does this wash? And all of our stuff is actually lab certified, so we guarantee it for 50 washes. I don't really know anybody that washes a jacket or a bag or something like that 50 times, so usually on those types of fabrics, if it holds up 15, 20 washes, it's fine, but we actually lab certify everything for 50 washes. Okay, so another thing I want to show you with the print cut process is you can go larger on the images, so it doesn't always have to be a technical fabric that's in the form of a garment. You can do things like table covers for trade show displays. You can do outdoor applications like pop-up tents and canopies. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize heat transfer films onto different fabrics. Another good example of things you can do is even small stuff like a small bag promotional products with a logo on it. It's all possible with the print cut process, so I'll pass that around. How do I accommodate that on the heat press? With this heat press or with our Hotronix air swinger, it's really simple. They have click and change platens, so I basically click that out, I can lift this platen off, and then I can load something smaller that's more suitable. If you do a lot of like one type of custom item, we can customize a laser cut platen. So maybe if you're doing can koozies, for instance, we can have have something where you can press 6 at once. Like this. So we can load 6 koozies or 6 sleeves or whatever we want to do at once, and we can just drop it down into the heat press. Those are heavy when you got them in both arms. Okay, so questions, comments about print cut and how that's used for technical fabrics before we move on to the next decorating option. So right now we're limitless. We're not limited by color. We're not limited by fabric type. We just basically have to match the right material up with the right technical fabric in order to produce it. Does anybody do direct-to-garment printing? Probably couldn't think about touching a lot of these items that we've decorated so far. It's just not possible. Okay, so the next process I want to talk, let's stick with the digital process and go a step further, is dye sublimation. Dye sublimation is a process where you print with a special sublimation ink onto a transfer paper. We've pre-printed some stuff in our shop here. So this is basically a sublimation transfer. There's no cutting, no weeding, nothing like that. It's just printed in a mirror image, and we're going to flip it over and press that onto this polyester garment. What do you notice about this garment? It's white. Yeah, it's the first thing you notice. It's pretty basic and simple, but yeah, it's white, and it has to be white for sublimation to work. Yes, I can do, you know, pastel shades, but it has to be a lighter color. Yes, I can do a red shirt if I want to do just black on it, but the color of the garment is going to impact the color of the print because it's actually dyeing the garment. So white is going to give you your most true colors with sublimation. Also, it has to be polyester, at least 65% polyester to sublimate it. So there may be a niche market where sublimation makes perfect sense, and there are plenty of them, but I just want you to be aware as decorators, if your goal is to have something completely versatile, it's not as versatile as some of the other technologies we just showed you. But I think you should have multiple decorating disciplines, so if you have sublimation and you have print cut, it's kind of like there's probably not a job you can't conquer with those two things. So some people will prefer sublimation because of the way it dyes the fabric and feels. So I have this heat press booted up. Once again, I'm going to preheat for a few seconds. Position my design down. Cover it with a cover sheet. And it takes about 60 seconds to apply the sublimation print down to get it to dye that fabric. So a lot of shops, what they'll do is they'll do all over sublimation or sublimate the fabric panels before they sew the garment together. So if you see items like motocross jerseys, sublimated soccer uniforms, a lot of times it will be sublimated with a rotary drum heat press or a large format heat press. They'll sublimate the panels and then they'll cut and sew the garment together. So when you get this and somebody brings their motocross jersey into your shop and says, oh, can you put my name and number on my jersey? You can, but what happens with sublimation? When you heat it up to a certain temperature, you start to release the dyes, and the dyes want to migrate through your graphic. So that's where you would need to pick a product that blocks dye migration if somebody brings in a sublimated jersey. It's usually real easy to tell because you just look inside and it's usually white because it starts with a white base fabric to sublimate it, right? And then you have your full color design or pattern on the outside. So I'll pass this around and you can see how that looks and feels on that garment. Questions, comments about sublimation? Anybody currently doing it? Yeah, pretty happy with it on the fabrics it works with? Okay. Okay, so we have heat transfer film, we have the print cut process, and now we have sublimation, all of which can accommodate technical fabrics. The last process that I want to talk about today, before I let you know about some specials on some products you can buy, is screen printed transfers. Screen printed transfers, the process is this. You can go to Transfer Express, which is a group Stahl company. They're in booth 1245. Want to make sure, did I get that right? Okay, 1245, sharing a booth with Stahls. So you can go and learn all about transfers there, but the concept is this: a screen printing equipment screen prints down onto paper, onto a carrier paper, and then you have a screen printed transfer that you can just get into your shop, and with just a heat press, you can start applying numbers and different things down to technical fabrics. So if you don't want to invest in a vinyl cutter, if you don't want to invest in a print cut device, you can just order transfers. And then I should also say, which I meant to say earlier, if you don't want to invest in this equipment anyways and you just want to send us the art at Stahls, we can produce these prints for you. They're called CAD prints. So if you don't want to invest $15,000, let us do the printing for you. We'll send you the transfer like you see here, ready to apply to your item. Likewise, we can send you the cut design ready to apply to your item. So this is just a single color number, and the formula that I've ordered from Transfer Express here is called Elastiprints. So it should have some good stretch and rebound when it's applied onto this same stretch fabric that we've been utilizing for the other items, so you can compare it. This applies down at 365. I was hoping it fit on my heat press. $365, I believe it's for 4 seconds. I'm going to give it a little extra just in case I'm off. You can't really mess these things up. And this one's a cold peel. I know that because I just started peeling it and it started to pull up. So the goof proof is pretty simple, but it's not for stretch fabrics. You just press it 365, 4 seconds, and you peel it hot right away. We'll show you that in the next presentation that we do. But for the Elastiprints, you need to let it cool down before you peel away the backing. Right in the box. Sorry, I was way off. It's 275, 15 seconds, medium to firm pressure. That's why you follow instructions. But I'll let that cool down and then I peel it. So ultimately, when you look at screen printed transfers, where does this come into play? For designs, if you get up into quantities of like 36 pieces plus, it really makes a lot of sense, because they're actually screen printing it, so your cost starts to reduce down more so than using heat applied film. But there's limitations, because with screen printing, you know, we're burning a screen for every color. So once you start to increase in the color count, the situation kind of changes, and you need to look at digital transfers or CAD prints completed with the print cut process. Okay, so this is on the garment. We'll let you give that a stretch and a tug and see what you think. But basically, it allows you to screen print in your shop without all the mess and all the equipment. All you need is a heat press. Yeah, good question. How about dye migration and screen printed transfers? That particular formula right there won't stop dye migration, but a lot of people are finding success because it applies at such a low temperature. It doesn't activate the dyes in the garment. Also, there's transfers out there that you can source that have a dye blocker on them as well. Just like a screen printer would print a dye migration blocker when they screen print a garment, or use a low bleed ink, you can source transfers in the same way. Okay, so basically we've looked at 4 different processes for accommodating technical fabrics. We've gone through sublimation, CAD-CUT heat transfer film, CAD color print cut, and screen printed transfers. The key thing that I want you to leave here today with is that all this can be done with a heat press. How many people own a heat press? So if you're not sourcing heat transfers already from Stahls, if you're not marketing that you can decorate these items, you're just missing opportunities. I mean, we can do the work for you. You all own a heat press. Almost every single person here owns a heat press. So all you literally have to do is go through our website or get with one of our experts here and understand what transfers you can use on what fabrics. And hopefully we've cleared some of that up for you today.